Tonight on Global National, a big day for Canada's Olympians. A thrilling come-from-behind victory, giving Summer McIntosh a golden hat trick. And the women's rowing team powers their way to silver.
I was in shock and awe that I got to be on the podium again and live this with my family.
Preparing for the worst as a landslide blocks the Chilcotin River in British Columbia.
We're anticipating a flood sooner or later.
The concerns for where and how fast that water will flow. Plus, rising regional tensions in the Middle East. Israeli airstrikes hit a school sheltering displaced Palestinians in Gaza as Iran vows retaliation for slain Hamas and Hezbollah leaders. And from the sky to the sea.
Our concept would allow us to identify and subsequently track the whale.
How scientists are using tools in space to protect powerful creatures in our waters.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Tracy Tong.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Well, it was a day full of nail-biting excitement at the Paris Games today, on the ground and especially in the water, where Team Canada saw a flurry of medal wins. That includes star swimmer Summer McIntosh's historic win at the 200-meter individual medley. She is now the first Canadian ever to earn triple gold at the Olympics. The high point in a whirlwind day of mixed fortunes for Canada's athletes. Our Redmond Shannon is in Paris covering the games for us and joins us now with more. Redmond.
Tracy, it really was a roller coaster day for the Canadian athletes and fans. It started so well in rowing, but in track and field there was a huge shock for one of Canada's biggest stars. But as the evening progressed, Canada's medal count climbed again, partly thanks to you-know-who, Summer McIntosh.
The endless summer continues. 17-year-old Summer McIntosh rewriting history with her fourth medal in Paris, 3 of them gold. A record-breaking end to a remarkable day. So-called Super Saturday started with a silver streak. Canada's women's eights making the podium for the second straight games, finishing between Romania and Great Britain.
It was incredibly special this time to get to share it with our friends and family that were here, because in Tokyo obviously they weren't here, and so that was a huge motivator for a bunch of us, was to be able to repeat a performance that would get us to share that experience with them.
4 of the team won the 8th gold in Tokyo. Others are new to the big boat, like Christina Walker.
Because you're so exhausted, and I can barely breathe half the time when I cross the finish line. I'm like kind of hyperventilating. This last year was incredible, and this is like the cherry on top for sure.
With a boatload of silvers in the bag, Canadian attention returned to the violet track. Damien Warner sitting second in the decathlon coming into the pole vault. Until disaster struck, the reigning champion failing all 3 attempts at his first vault, effectively ending his chances. He pulled out of the final events. A statement from the Canadian Olympic Committee said Damien and his team are devastated. A tough semi-final for Audrey Leduc too, missing out on a place in the 100-metre final. But it was back in the water where more precious metal materialised. Silver for Joshua Liendo and a second bronze of the Games for Ilya Haroun.
Canada's medal count in the pool could climb even higher on Sunday. Our men's and women's teams are in the 4x100 metre freestyle relay finals. It's unclear yet if Summer McIntosh will take part, but even without her, Canada is a strong contender. Tracy?
All right, our Redmond Shannon in Paris for us. Thank you, Redmond. And with 4 gold, 4 silver, and 7 bronze, Canada sits at number 10 in the official standings. It ranks countries by how many gold medals they have. China is on top with 16, followed by the U.S. and France. And the Canadian women's soccer team's quest for another gold medal is over. Today, Germany eliminated the women's team in the quarterfinal. Neither side scored until all the way into a penalty shootout. This still caps off a remarkable run, though, for Canada's female soccer players. They powered through a hefty 6-point penalty imposed by FIFA. This after some of the team coaches were suspended for using drones to spy on opponents' training. In boxing, Algerian athlete Imane Khalif has ensured a medal for her country after winning the women's quarterfinal. It comes as the International Olympic Committee defends Khalif and Taiwanese boxer Lin Yuting against disputes surrounding their gender identity.
We have two boxers who are born as women, who have been raised as women. There was never any doubt about them being a woman.
The IOC president also denounced hate speech being directed at the two athletes. They have been subject to online abuse and misconceptions about being transgender. It stems from their disqualification last year by the International Boxing Association, which claims the two failed unspecified tests over high levels of testosterone. But the Russian-led governing body was permanently banned by the IOC last year for its long troubled history involving corruption. In the Caribou region of BC, about 600 kilometers northeast of Vancouver, there are hopes tonight that a serious flooding disaster may be averted. On Tuesday night, a giant landslide came down, blocking the Chilcotin River. That river flows into the much larger Fraser River, and when the blockage gives way, a rush of water could ensue. Catherine Urquhart is tracking the impacts on the local First Nation, on fish habitat, and what this could mean for communities downriver.
We're anticipating a flood sooner or later. We don't know how big it's going to be.
On the Chilcotin Nation, they're bracing for what's to come after a massive landslide dammed the Chilcotin River in BC's Caribou.
Also worried about the people that might have property further down in the area.
Evacuation orders span 107 square kilometers. There are ecological concerns and fears for human safety.
Interior Health has relocated patients from Lillooet to an alternative location as a precautionary measure.
Current modeling indicates the water may go over the top instead of bursting through in a sudden rush. If it were to burst, the Chilcotin River would rise well above peak spring runoff. The Fraser River would be below typical spring peak water levels.
From what I heard last night, it's about 1 kilometer long and about 600 meters wide and still 30 meters high. The water is building up behind it.
Advisories have been issued urging people to stay away from the Chilcotin and Fraser River banks. Not everyone is adhering. On the Fraser River north of Hope, one group continues to fish for sturgeon.
It's not going to come in 10 minutes. So if something happens there that's catastrophic, we're going to hear about it, and it's going to give us lots of time to get off the river today.
Salmon migration could be severely impacted by the slide. Experts are most concerned about sockeye.
It's one of the largest stocks we have of sockeye in Canada that migrates to Chilco Lake. There's also Chinook salmon, which are not doing very well.
Large slides have hit the region before, in 2004 and in 1964, although this one is much larger.
Honestly, it's quite crazy to see the river dry.
Perhaps most unsettling is the uncertainty. As the water continues to build, exactly how and when it will breach the dam remains a calculated guess. Catherine Urquhart, Global News, Vancouver.
2 Alberta men have been found not guilty of conspiring to kill police at the Coutts border blockade in 2022. The pair, however, has been convicted of mischief and possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose. Anthony Olenek and Chris Carbert were arrested after police found weapons, ammunition, and body armor near the blockade in 2022. Olenek was also convicted of possessing a pipe bomb. The blockade was one of several held across the country to protest COVID-19 rules and vaccine mandates. The 7-week trial heard statements and texts from the accused, who had been warning the blockade was a last stand against what they called the tyranny of the federal government. Police across the United Kingdom are bracing for more racially charged violence in the wake of a mass stabbing earlier this week. At least one vehicle was set ablaze on Friday night as far-right and anti-immigration protesters clashed with police. The violence erupting after multiple people were attacked at a dance class Monday. 3 girls, all under the age of 10, are dead. False information spread online that the suspect, a person of color, was a Muslim immigrant to the UK. But police have since said that the 17-year-old was actually born in Wales. The United States has revoked the controversial plea deal for the accused mastermind of the 9/11 terrorist attacks and 2 other defendants. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin put the death penalty back on the table just days after the military commission at Guantanamo Bay announced a plea deal had been reached with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and 2 other accused plotters in the attacks. That deal was heavily criticized by some of the families of the nearly 3,000 victims killed in the 2001 attacks. At least 32 people are dead, including 1 soldier, after a suicide bombing at a popular beach in Somalia. The militant Islamist group Al-Shabaab is claiming responsibility. Another 63 people were injured in the targeted strike, which happened as people were out on the beach ahead of the weekend. It is the deadliest attack in the country since October 2022. The U.S. military is sending more warships to the Middle East as Iran threatens retaliation against Israel for the killing of Hamas's top political leader. Israel launched 2 new airstrikes today in the West Bank, killing at least 9 people. Palestinian media and Israeli officials say the first strike on a vehicle left 5 dead, including a Hamas commander. The Israeli military said later on Saturday that another 4 militants were targeted after they fired on Israeli troops. In Gaza, a school was hit by an Israeli airstrike today. At least 15 people were killed. Hamas says the school was sheltering displaced Palestinians. The Israeli military claims the school was being used as a command center for Hamas. Preventing unnecessary collisions between vessels and whales. How these Canadian scientists are using satellites and drones to track the location of the majestic animals. Stay with us. Nearly 35 firefighters from Atlantic Canada are heading to Alberta on Sunday to join the battle against the Jasper wildfires. The teams from Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island will help crews that are fighting the out-of-control blaze at Jasper National Park, which spread into the town site last week and destroyed a third of its buildings. The blaze forced thousands of people to flee the park and the community. Residents whose homes have been damaged or destroyed are now able to register for a bus tour of the area. There is incredible new drone video tonight of a humpback whale off the coast of Washington state that's missing its tail. As the whale breaches the water to catch a breath, you can see its iconic tail, also known as its flukes, has been completely cut off. Researchers say it likely lost the tail in an entanglement, possibly with a line or fishing gear of some sort. The whale was originally spotted off the coast of British Columbia near Campbell River on July 10th.
The remarkable thing with this whale is that it's lived on long enough for us to document it so that we can then bring it to the attention of everybody. It's one thing to show pictures of whales that are entangled or, to talk about whales that have died from entanglements or see entanglement scars. But this whale swimming in the Salish Sea completely without a tail, I feel like is the poster child for the hazards that they're facing in the world's oceans.
And on Canada's east coast, there's a new effort underway to make the oceans safer for whales, all the way from space. Heidi Petracek shows us how one company is using satellites and artificial intelligence to keep these animals safe.
With roughly 360 North Atlantic right whales in the world, agencies in Canada are trying to protect those left. A search for solutions not only on Earth, but in space.
So how do you see a whale?
So what we've done is we've trained machine learning algorithms to spot whales using satellite images.
In other words,
what we did with the artificial intelligence is to come up with what I would call a facial recognition for the North Atlantic right whale species in particular.
And that's just the start. This Nova Scotia-based company, Global Spatial Technology Solutions, can find not only the whales, but nearby vessels around them. And using data like marine traffic patterns and whale feeding areas,
we can get a higher probability of a collision occurring
and hopefully prevent them.
Our concept would allow us to identify and subsequently track the whale in what we would call a moving haven. That means that we could limit the area so that fewer ships would have to slow down and move over.
The company started working on the idea in 2021.
And we have staff, of course, as I've mentioned, located across the country from...
It's part of a program launched by the Canadian Space Agency, which divided $5.3 million among 5 companies tasked with using space tech to track whales.
There are current methods for monitoring them with aircraft and with drones. The difficulty with that is, though, you have to cover a large area with a very small amount of technology.
With satellites, you could potentially see a whale without ever leaving shore, but it's not quite that simple.
Whatever we see from space has to be validated by what we see on the surface.
Kirby says there's still several years of research ahead. Time of the essence for this endangered species. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Ahead, from rivals to a powerhouse pair on the sand. Up next, how this Canadian beach volleyball duo is trying to make history at the Games. Well, Canada's hopes to win a medal in women's beach volleyball are still alive. Melissa Humana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson beat Czechia, also known as the Czech Republic, to stay in the running for the podium today. They'll face an uphill battle, though, as the pair will be the lower-ranked team in their remaining elimination games. As Taria Isri reports, the duo will be relying on their years-long friendship, as well as some past rivalries, to take the challenge on.
In beach volleyball, getting out of the way can be just as key as getting out in front. But sometimes the best strategy is getting back together.
We were the same rookie class at university, and so we kind of grew up together on a team.
A decade ago, Canada's Melissa Humana-Paredes and Brandy Wilkerson were teammates at York University. After graduating, the women went pro and were opponents.
We saw and maybe appreciated each other from the other side, but also kind of like hated each other from the other side. It's like, oh, you're so annoying, you're so good.
Now, as allies, they're partnering up in Paris and taking a shot at Olympic glory.
I'm playing with a world-class athlete who's also an amazing human being and dedicated to being that.
They've been to the Olympics before, but with different partners. Both Humana-Paredes and Wilkerson were eliminated in the quarterfinals in Tokyo. They're hoping to up their game and become the first Canadian women to medal in the sport.
I solely play my position. I know nothing about yours.
Yeah.
And I got to do my job. But then it's like, we absolutely need you.
100%. And if you're having a bad day, there are no substitutions.
And there's no coaches on the court?
Nothing. You rely 100% on each other. And there are very few other sports like that.
And few sports are played on the sand, which this year comes from a perhaps unlikely source.
They'll bring it in. Actually, they bring it in for the Olympics, but it's actually from a place in Ontario that they bring in sand. No, I'm not kidding.
A home court advantage of sorts for a duo trying to make history. Taria Isri, Global News, Montreal.
Next, partying downtown. The sights and sounds of Toronto's Caribbean Carnival. These legendary performances from Aerosmith are now a thing of the past. The band has announced it's retiring from touring due to a vocal injury to lead singer Steven Tyler. Tyler fractured his larynx last September, which caused the band to cancel the remaining dates on their farewell tour. Aerosmith called the decision heartbreaking, but necessary. Well, there was no shortage of music and colors at Toronto's Caribbean Carnival as it returned for another year. What's known as North America's biggest street party saw revelers take over city streets for the annual celebration. Joe Scarpelli headed down to take in the sights and the sounds.
This is Toronto Revelers Queen.
It's hard to hear her, but impossible to miss Sienna Williams. Her costume taking up nearly the entire width of Lakeshore Boulevard.
Talk about your friend. Your mother, you make her. It's based off of the Mother Earth, Gaia herself, Greek mythology, and the goddess of all life.
While she's been coming to Toronto's Caribbean Carnival since she was just 2 years old, others coming from around the world to enjoy the electric soca beats, stunning costumes, and food at the annual parade for the very first time.
I'm loving the day. We flew in from Atlanta, Georgia, so this is amazing for us.
Toronto isn't the only city to host an event like this. There are a number of carnivals that take place around the world to celebrate Caribbean culture. The Grand Parade in Canada's largest city is known as North America's biggest, capping off weeks of festivities.
I've jumped in Trinidad, I've jumped in other islands, but this right here is by far the absolute most amazing. Anybody needs to learn anything they need to know about the Caribbean culture, come to Carnival.
Where carnival veterans like Williams might just have you in awe.
My family, my past family brought me into this culture, so these hours mean a lot to me, and I'll never give it up for anything else.
Joe Scarpelli, Global News.
And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Tracy Tong. Tonight's Your Canada is this shot of Kitts Beach in Vancouver. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.